Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood night. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you on Monday, December 6th. I'm your host, Josh Guesman. A little bit of stuff to talk about. Not a bunch. We're not going to keep you here forever, but welcome to a wonderful Monday show. December in full swing. MLS Cup coming up this weekend. If you raise your hand, if you have Portland and NYC in the final, I know I didn't. Just proves all you have to do is win, and you can get there. All right, Real Salt Lake's run comes to an end. A whole bunch of cheating ends in a Western Conference appearance. So interesting to see that as well. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what MLS is talking about with their MLS Next Pro coming out and why you really don't need to pay any attention to it, but it is an interesting thing. Tyler Boyd to the LA Galaxy is a rumor that's out there. We're going to talk a little bit about Julian Araujo and Efrain Alvarez. Again, to help me do all this, he's back. He's here. It's the Panda himself, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kev, how's it going, bud?
All right. Yes, I am back from Mexico. But what was that you said? I want to get that down. All you have to do, what was that? All you have to do is win, and then you make it to the final?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
Wow.
That was a Bruceism. I thought you would like it. If you win more games than you lose, then you're a little bit better team. If you score more goals than the opponent, then you will win. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think I figured it out.
Speaking of Bruce Arena, do you know the last Western Conference team that was not from the Pacific Northwest, that was not named Portland Timbers or Seattle Sounders, the last Western Conference team to make it to MLS final was
the LA Galaxy.
2014. It's been that long. Chivas USA was still in the league that season, and that was the last time the Galaxy played an MLS Cup final. Right. By the way, it's the longest drought now, 7 years, longest drought in franchise history.
I have a spreadsheet that tracks how many days in between stuff and things like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a good spreadsheet for Galaxy fans if you want to like drink your weekend away or something like that.
It's not good. We are in a real funk.
Yeah, I would like to blame the LA Galaxy for having me many times spend a ton of money whenever they're not playing and they're not keeping me busy, Kevin. I go out and spend money on things like crazy because I all of a sudden have free time and I think I have hobbies. When instead, if the Galaxy would just make it all the way to MLS Cup, I wouldn't have time for all of these quote-unquote hobbies. And I wouldn't have time for all these extracurricular things. So I think I'm going to send the Galaxy a bill, and it's going to be a hefty one.
You got that train thing going on now. I outgrew model trains when I was like 6, but you keep going.
That's what everybody walks by and says, "Oh, this is so nice. You're doing it for your son." I'm like, "What? He's asleep whenever I do this. All right, this is my fun. I have a good time." So,
are you broadcasting from the Griffith Park Planetarium, by the way?
No, this is my wintry mix. I told you we went over this last time. This is my wintry mix, winter like festival feeling that I got going on here, and we've talked about how wintry mix is a wonderful. It sounds wonderful, but it's one of the 7 gates of hell. So that's
the Winter Warlock is going to pop out of the background there.
That's fine. By the way, I should point out, Kevin and I were talking, and December 20th is our last show for the year. It'll be our last show for the
calendar year.
Yeah, for the calendar year. Yeah. So we will be going ahead and just making that. So the December 20th will be our Christmas special. So Kevin and I were trying to, coordinate some outfits and stuff like that. I asked him to dress up like an elf, so I'm hoping that pops through there because we all need that in our lives.
What'd you get me, big guy?
Nothing. Cole. You get like as a normal. You get Cole. By the way,
spending some of that Corner of the Galaxy cash, I bet.
By the way, big shout out. David is contributing to the model train fund. Apparently, David says may duck out early deadline on comic scripts so I can get it to the artist, but wanted to send a Christmas gift to the show and say thank you. Also hoping to hear about Terrence Boyd and Ilie Sanchez. So we'll talk about both of those. Thank you, David. We appreciate it. $10 super chat. Super nice to do that. But Kevin, so we're in this off-season mode. It is slow. It is also very quiet, and I mentioned this on Thursday's show, but I think it now bears repeating because we're back on a Monday. So we've gone all the way through the weekend again. Little crickets playing here and there. That's about it. That's all we've really heard from the LA Galaxy outside of something we already knew, which was Julian Araujo and Efrain Alvarez were called up to the Mexican national team. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. It feels... I don't know if it feels too quiet, and it's just because this is this lull before MLS Cup, and then things will eventually go. But again, we've seen, a major piece, Dennis DeClose, depart as general manager, and we haven't heard or really seen from the LA Galaxy to sort of explain what they're going to be doing for this next year and how they were sort of distributing things out. Is that not, at least not publicly?
It's weird because Chris Klein I've had two conversations with Chris Klein, one by phone and one just in text message. The first one was after Dennis left, and Chris said, my question was, well, how is this going to work? Is Greg Vanney going to do the general manager duties? Is he going to have a helper? How's that all going to work? And Chris said, we're talking that over now, which is a little bit, I'm not sure how sincere that was, because they knew Dennis was, I think they suspected Dennis was going to leave for a while, and I'm sure they had some plans. He said, we're working on that now. We will, go public with our new structure soon, and everything is humming along and everything's great. No news here. And then I haven't heard from him. That's been a couple of weeks. The second conversation we had was last week when the Orange County Register story came out about him selling his house, and I reached out to him and said, should we read anything into this? And he said, no, not really. And then I tried to sort of pin him down on what exactly that meant, and that was the last I heard of him. I don't know if he was kidnapped or what, or whether he just stopped talking, but it was right in the middle of a conversation, and it's been a week now, and I haven't heard from him. So I hope he's okay.
Yeah, I would imagine that he is. I would imagine he is. I did sort of again. And having talked to you a little bit, I sort of shot down a little bit of the fervor around Chris Klein selling his house. That means he's leaving. That means he's going somewhere. And I explained, I think, and I hope I didn't, patronize everybody, but I did explain what Southern, Orange County and in that area where he was at, what the real estate is doing and why it was a great time to do exactly what he's doing, which is to sell a house. Especially one that apparently, according to the register, he bought for around $3 million and now has it listed for 1.6 higher in just a couple of years. It's rare that you can make $1.6 million, Kevin, just over a couple of years, and real estate is one of those things in Orange County that would do it. But well, I should point out that, and I want to sort of say this, is that it doesn't mean that it's not, something isn't going on either, and that this isn't just, a little bit of a smokescreen on stuff as well, right? I mean, we can be a little cautious with that.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that he's not even going to change zip codes, that it's just, he's taking advantage of the real estate market, as you said, and maybe he's going to, downsize a little bit, or, but he hadn't said that. We haven't said that definitively. He hasn't said, I'm not going anywhere. Our suspicion that you and I have talked about individually, and perhaps this is unfair to even mention on the show, but since I'm going down that well right. Anyways, I might as well keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. He is working with the 2026 World Cup committee. In fact, he's heading it. So he's going to be really busy over the next 4 to 5 years. His contract with the Galaxy runs out after next season, 2022. My understanding is that he had signed a 5-year contract extension after the 2017 season, which is still mind-boggling to me, worst season in history, and the guy in charge of the train wreck signs a 5-year deal. But he, has rated the ship somewhat, and 2022 is his last season. Whether he's preparing to take over full-time the 2026 World Cup committee for Los Angeles, I don't know. That could be a full-time job. Seems like a weird time to leave now. I don't know until, we, as you said, everything has kind of gone dark and quiet. And I understand why. There's not a lot going on. If I'm the president of a soccer team, this is probably the time of year I go dark and quiet too.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, I know a bunch of players are, either on their way out of town or have left town already, right? It is that like vacation time where if you're going to spend any time with your family, you're going to do anything, now's the time to be away, because sort of between MLS Cup and John was asking in the chat room as well. He was saying, is there an MLS blackout on news up until MLS Cup? And the answer is no, but also yes, there is. There's a tendency for teams to want to wait for MLS Cup to be over, because let's say you make any moves or you do any big things right now, Kevin, it's all sort of overshadowed by the fact that you're not playing for the championship game, which is going on, this weekend. So there's always some of that is encrusted in all of these moves around now. Obviously people who want coaches need to find coaches, and those are things that have to happen right away. And sometimes even player signings can be okay. It sort of shows you're going to next. But at the same time, that league-wide, and I think this is less so in Major League Soccer and more so in some of the other major sports in the United States, which is once your team is knocked out of, contention, out of the playoffs, out of whatever you're doing towards MLS Cup, you kind of are like, okay, next, what's going on? I mean, I watched some games this weekend, which were interesting, and I don't know if people are not following Philadelphia and seeing 11 players go on the health and safety protocols and not being able to play. Talk about just absolutely gut-wrenching to play a whole season and then have 11 guys go on health and safety protocols, basically the COVID protocol, and there were multiple people on that were starters, and you just tear it apart.
Six starters, including the goalkeeper.
6 starters. And huge guys in terms of, Bedoya was on there as well, right? And
Blake was the guy that got him there in the shootout.
Yeah, and so you look at all these different things that happen, and then to go down, and the way they played against New York City, and just that was so much fun to watch. And I said this, and I'll say it out loud so people can criticize me. There's 2 things you have to know about me over this weekend. One is, did you see that fake slide in NCAA football? There was a quarterback who pretended like he was going to slide, and then he ran.
Wrote all about that, yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's totally illegal, unless you want to allow players and tacklers to hit you whenever you slide. You should probably not fake slide, right? And so somebody has to do something about that. That's a rule that's set there. We don't want you hurting the quarterback, so the quarterback's going to use that as an advantage and pretend to be like, I'm going to slide, no, I'm going to run. That should be illegal. So that's one thing. So if you link that, and the reason I share that is if you link that with my feelings about New York City celebrating and jumping all around in Philadelphia's stadium and jumping off crazy, they played a B team, a forced B team, and I'm not saying Philadelphia didn't put up a great fight. They did. It was always one of those like Cinderella stories. What's going to happen? Can Philadelphia actually pull it off? And they played so well to try and do that. But you could tell what was going on. And the fact that New York City came out there, and to their credit, their coach said afterwards, he said, I didn't think we played very well today. I don't think we played very well at all. Defensively we were okay, but offensively we struggled. After the game, he said that. So at least I can tip my hat to that. But watching them celebrate there and do that on the Philadelphia field, it rubbed me all wrong. I did not like it.
And I said, by the way, Andre Blake led Philadelphia in the shootout against New England. Of course, that was against Nashville. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think a lot of the Philadelphia players, and talking about Bedoya and Andre Blake, who I just mentioned, Jim Curtin, the coach, my sense is they're pretty popular among their peers. And so I think because of what you just talked about, and because of the fact that they lost 6 starters to the COVID protocols, which is not the same as saying these players tested positive. It's COVID protocols, right. And we're not quite sure what that means. But my point is going to be, I think probably a majority of MLS players and coaches and teams are now rooting for Portland in this final because of New York's little over-the-top celebration.
Can we go back to the LA Galaxy? We talked about the Western Conference and the last
the
time.
LA who?
Yeah, the LA Galaxy, that team. Okay. The podcast we're doing.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
There's the logo right there.
If everybody remembers, the Galaxy went up to Seattle and ended up beating Seattle. And then they presented the Western Conference trophy, and Robbie Keane was the captain, and so they presented Robbie Keane the trophy. Or was it Landon? I think it might have even been Landon who went out there. And they said, "Congratulations, Landon. Here's the Western Conference trophy." And Landon goes, "Thank you," puts it down, and everybody left the stage. That was it, right? And again, it's different because you look at New York City, who hasn't won, a conference championship before, hasn't won an MLS Cup, and what they're doing. So it's like, as somebody says, is like they acted like Robot said they acted like they never won anything before. Well, they haven't. I mean, that was it. They just won something. So there's some of that, and I can understand being excited about it too. But I always appreciated the fact that, and this is the same in hockey, right? Whenever you win the conference and you win, you're like, thank you. No, I'm not touching it. That's not the one we want. We want the Stanley Cup. It's that type of thing. You want the MLS Cup, and it's just interesting to see. I mean, Portland celebrated like they were throwing a party, everywhere too. So it's not like you can criticize and say Portland's won stuff before. So you can't sit there. So I just find it interesting that I tend to, and I'm very much a have fun guy. I'm a very much soccer guy. I'm like bat flips and baseball, flip the bat. Have some fun. Enjoy yourself. Do the whole thing. Get real. But for whatever reason, the New York City celebration rubbed me the wrong way. And I would imagine that the LA Galaxy, had they been in a similar position, even though it's been 7 years, even though it feels like it's forever, even though the team that's there now hasn't won anything for a very long time, I would feel like they would still be like they've been there before.
Well, it's like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, King Arthur celebrating after he cuts off all the limbs of the Black Knight. It's like, come on, it's kind of unfair at this point. But, you mentioned hockey. Hockey has so many, I just want to say hockey has so many cool traditions, like that one where you can't touch the Stanley Cup until you've won it. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of cool.
It is fun. And, the playoff
and
beards.
That was and playoff beards. Yeah, mm-hmm. That was Landon's thing too. Like, we've won it before, so let's act like we won it before. You're right. When New York played Philadelphia, by the way, those were two teams that had never been to MLS Cup final. I think Philadelphia's streak now is 11 years. Might be the longest, one of the longest, certainly in the league.
Yeah, there's maybe a plaque. Maybe you shouldn't win a trophy for the conference. Maybe you should just get a plaque, Kevin. Maybe you should,
Who gets the wooden spoon this year?
The last place team was Cincinnati.
Okay.
And they've won it, I think, 3 years in a row or 2 years in a row.
I know that. Yeah, reigning the spooners.
Although 2020, they technically didn't hand out they shouldn't have handed out a supporter shield. They got it right the first time, but they didn't hand out a wooden spoon. So technically they've just won it the last 2 years, but really it's 3 years. So yeah, Feel the Berm says, maybe we just give everybody a scented candle for winning the conference championship. Congratulations. Here, this smells like Teen Spirit. All right. So, that was just an interesting little aside there. We'll allow that to sort of sit there. Jonathan dos Santos, again, the rumors going to the Houston. This is interesting because I talked about it on Thursday. I want to talk about it a little bit more, though, Kevin. Just with Jonathan dos Santos and the rumors about going to the Houston Dynamo. I was of the, false impression that Jonathan dos Santos wouldn't stay in Major League Soccer. It makes sense that he might. All right, but for the most part, we usually see international players whenever they're done, whenever their contracts have come up, that they don't stay in Major League Soccer. Juan Pablo Angel, of course, would be a great argument against that, and then he came to the LA Galaxy from New York Red Bulls whenever that was over. That was one of those things that happened. But Jonathan dos Santos and possibly go to Houston. Houston makes sense in terms of the locale and really what Houston has always sort of tried to do a little bit, which was appeal to fans both in the state of Texas and south of the border in Mexico. And if you get somebody like Jonathan dos Santos, a Mexican national team player, then you have that sort of link there. And I'm sure that he would be welcomed in Houston. But for whatever reason, I just don't feel like that's the best fit for him, although this has been rumored for a while now.
And Austin, I think, for those reasons you just mentioned, would also be another good fit. My assumption was that he would go back and follow his brother and go back to the Mexican League. But when we say back to the Mexican League, he's never played in the Mexican League. He left as a fifth grader, basically, when he went to Barcelona. So he's never played in the Mexican League, and that may be one of the reasons he's a little bit reticent. He's never played in there, doesn't know the league. He's talked to a lot of people about it. It may not be where he wants to go now. I think he still wants to play. He's still fairly young, 31?
31. Well, his age is young. His body is old, right? I mean, that's sort of, we always have to argue because we're going to talk about 31-year-old Elia Sanchez as well. There's some weird stuff I'll tell you about it on that, but Elia Sanchez, he's 31, and you look at the numbers and the stats and the things he's put up, his body is not, 40. Jonathan dos Santos is 31, and his body is 42.
And that may be another reason, too. I mean, I know we hear about the athleticism and the physicality of MLS. I would argue that it's maybe less physical, less taxing than the Liga MX. Especially in a lot of those games at altitude. They do have travel there. It's, Mexico is a big country. So I'm beginning to warm to the idea that he may wind up in MLS. I know he doesn't want to go away. He doesn't want to retire.
Right.
And I don't think he wants to leave the proximity of Mexico and his family, especially after, his father just died. And I'm sure that hit him in a way like, I don't want to be too far away. Imagine if I wasn't in LA when that had happened. So yeah, I do think that he probably wants to stay around. He wants to be close enough to be with the Mexican national team if we get called in again. So you're right, Houston, and then again Austin. I think I know that one hasn't been mentioned, but that also makes a lot of sense.
By the way, Tom Bogert from MLSsoccer.com was reporting also that Jonathan dos Santos also is being approached by Liga MX, and so there's a definite chance that he could end up there as well still. But there were talks with Houston, and again, it just feels like I always thought he would probably go back, and again, I will use go back to Mexico to play. Just because that's where his dad played and that's where his brother was and his family has some, but I mean, his family's also located here in Los Angeles and, he can sort of go. So, very interesting, sort of stuff. Now, when we talk about 31-year-old Jonathan dos Santos and 31-year-old Elia Sanchez, I want to point out that on Thursday I talked about Elia Sanchez and why that made sense. Kevin and I actually got on a phone call and talked about it, why it would make sense. That rumor is fake. Right? The rumor came out as fake, I think, on Friday or Monday or whatever it was. And I didn't have any inside information on it, never claimed to have any inside information on it. And so apparently it was started by somebody at SKC. I'm going to tell you the reason that it was, that it at least made sense to us is that there are a lot of connecting factors that you can sort of make and why it could happen. Again, if you're looking at somebody like Sebastian Lletget, which we talked about on Thursday and talked about why perhaps Jonathan or Sebastian Lletget might get traded from the LA Galaxy, Kevin, it's that, does he really fit in the system? Can the LA Galaxy turn that into a big asset in terms of going out and getting something and, making a lot of money off that, and general allocation money, maybe international slots? And can you do something to better your team if you think that Sebastian Lletget can't fit into your system, which I think is still a stretch to say he can't. And there's a huge PR side to that really you do have to consider. I know people are like, no, you can't consider. Yes, you do have to consider it. U.S. men's national team player, very well liked, that type of thing. So there's a reason that makes sense. So while I've seen the quote unquote the DMs that say that the Elia Sanchez rumor is fake, I will just tell you that it still seems that would still be a move that could possibly happen for the LA Galaxy, and not to just count it out. Again, no inside information. It's just it makes sense in terms of what the LA Galaxy are trying to do. And we already know, as a defensive midfielder with Ilie Sanchez, we already know that the LA Galaxy possibly also interested in a 22-year-old defensive midfielder, Victor Felipe Mendez, a Chilean player, who we may actually get to see playing against Julian Araujo and Efrain Alvarez whenever Chile and Mexico face off on Wednesday. So, there's a lot of little things that sort of tie in. So a defensive midfielder in the Chilean, a defensive midfielder in Ilie Sanchez. Kevin, my argument on Thursday with myself is, does that mean that Raveloson is your 8 now? He's more box to box and he's going to do what Jonathan dos Santos was supposed to do, and that now you're going to go out and get a 6? And does that make sense to transform that for the LA Galaxy to get a better 6? Let Raveloson be your 8 and sort of switch things around that way? Or is Raveloson the defensive midfielder and you should be looking for something else in that midfield?
Well, I think Raveloson proved that he deserves to be a little more involved in the offense, that he can certainly fill that role. Your point about Sebastian Lletget is really interesting, though. With Julian Araujo now out of the picture, he's going to play for Mexico. There's no turning back now, even though he's not cap tied yet. He did ask FIFA for the one-time waiver, so he's out of the U.S. picture. The Galaxy is a big club in a very big market at a time when the World Cup is about to come here with the next World Cup. This will be a World Cup year coming up. All those should be factors for the Galaxy. If Sebastian Lletget goes, there is nobody on the horizon that's going to play for the U.S. national team. There is nobody on this Galaxy team, I don't think Madagascar is going to make the World Cup. There's nobody on this team that's going to be in the World Cup. And so the Galaxy then are going to lose all of that attention.
Araujo and Efrain Alvarez, right? Because you're talking about for the U.S. on the U.S. side of things.
Yeah, and so you're right. We do have the 2 Mexican players, and in LA that might be enough. Maybe the Galaxy have decided that, you know what, if you're on the Mexican World Cup team, that's even better than being on the U.S. World Cup team in LA. But I don't think the Galaxy want to sit out the World Cup, I guess is my point. Sebastian Lletget is the one guy on the U.S. Team that's going to be playing for the Galaxy. And the U.S. team right now, by the way, is they opened camp yesterday, Sunday, at Dignity Health Sports Park. No LA Galaxy players in camp.
Yeah, no
there's
Sebastian
one guy.
Lletget.
Yeah, one guy, which is understandable. He was second on the team and starts and appearances. So, this may be we don't know what it is. It may be just a rest. Maybe it's he didn't play in the last 3 games. Didn't start the last 3 games or last 2 games of qualifying. So we'll see what that means. But I do think the Galaxy need to think a little bit about that. Greg Berhalter told me that Sebastian Lletget took a while to grow on him. That the U.S. national team they really weren't sure where he fit in and what his best role would be. They found out he contributed mightily last season or this year rather. This is the most successful year. Or one of the most successful years in national team history in terms of wins and trophies. Sebastian fit in. He was a key part of that. And Greg Berhalter told me, Greg Vanney will figure that out. He will find a role for Sebastian Lletget. It doesn't seem like he's really done it yet. I don't think Sebastian is thriving in this system that Greg Vanney has set up. And that's why the talk of the trade, he's making almost $1 million. That would be salary that could be used in other places. He's not in a position of need right now. He doesn't fill a role that can't be filled by somebody else. So there's a lot of reasons to trade him and a lot of reasons not to.
Yeah, it again, we've talked about it. It's back and forth. And I'll tell you right now that whatever the Galaxy do, and it sort of feels almost like Giassi Zardes, right, Kevin? Remember famous LA Galaxy right back?
Right back, yeah.
Yeah.
Right back.
Giassi Zardes, you knew that wherever Giassi was going to go, you knew he couldn't stay with the LA Galaxy, and you knew wherever he was going to go, he was going to get better, right? Because it was one of those things he needed to change, things needed to change, but it still hurts that whenever you let go of somebody, they're going to get better and that you have to deal with that. So whatever happens with Sebastian Lletget, you have to offset that with whatever you're going to get, whether it's another international slot plus a whole bunch of, $1 million in general allocation money. Maybe Sebastian Lletget goes to somewhere like Charlotte where you mine some of that extra allocation money that expansion teams are going. Maybe he's one of the pieces that sort of starts, Charlotte on their way. But
there's a danger. You're right. All that is exactly right. And if Sebastian Lletget were to leave, and again, he has a place here, but if he were to leave, you're right, he would thrive. But the last thing the Galaxy want to do is have a Walker Zimmerman situation where that guy, Walker Zimmerman left LAFC, goes to Nashville, 2-time defender of the year. And
you haven't been able to replace him.
Yeah, and just, the void just stares you in the face every time you take the field.
That's where it sort of goes with all this. Let's go to the rumor here about Tyler Boyd as well. 26-year-old Tyler Boyd was originally
fits into the Lletget conversation, by the way.
It does a little bit because you're looking at somebody who is a U.S. men's national team international at some point. He has 10 caps, I think you said, Kevin?
He played in the 2019 Gold Cup.
Yep. So Tyler Boyd, he's a right winger, can play also in the center, so you can play a little central mid as well. I don't know if that's really where you want to play him, but Tyler Boyd mostly on the right side. Now, a whole bunch of things have to shift in order for this to even make sense. And so this was a rumor that was put out on the internet, on Twitter. I'm going to try to be as careful and as clarifying as I can, which is I don't have any information on this to tell you that, yes, this is happening. No, it's not happening. But we're going to talk about it. And if it comes about, then at least you'll have the information to sort of understand. He's playing in Turkey right now. He's 26 years old. This is guy
not playing, though. That's
part of 12. I think we have 12 games played and, right around 700 and something minutes in his little bit of time here with Turkey. And he's been with Besiktas. He's been loaned out twice now from that team, hasn't really played much for that team. And so you're seeing a guy who is struggling to sort of find a place. And Kevin, as you and I were talking about, I bet you could convince him that he might want to leave Turkey. And I bet you could probably, talk to Besiktas and get them to either release him or, at least find a small portion of money to which they would be happy to take. And then you could get Tyler Boyd coming your way. But here is the thing that is you're sort of trying to get, though. Is that you're trading down, right? Lletget is, I think, 29 years old right now, if I remember correctly. So Boyd is 26, getting a little bit younger.
But he'll be 27 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so 27. So you're getting a guy who's a couple years younger. But look who you have playing for the wingers right now for the LA Galaxy. Right? You have Sam Grandsir, you have Kevin Cabral, right? So you had on both sides of this attacking formation on the wings, you'd have to move one of those guys. So I was trying to think of how this could make sense. And again, sometimes you try to force it in order to understand maybe what somebody is thinking. And so if you're Greg Vanney And Greg Vanney talked about this after the season as well. Some of the things he learned is, having Chicharito in that 2-forward sort of set and making him more comfortable. Well, then perhaps you're starting to say that Kevin Cabral is going to be your second striker, and that with second striker with Cabral, you're going to then have a position for a winger. Lletget's not really a winger. He doesn't really fit that role. You can play him there. And certainly we've seen Victor Vasquez sort of play in that role, which is to swing out wide and open up space behind some of the wingers as they would run forward and sort of curl up in those little slots. He doesn't really fit there either. So if you're looking for a winger, you're looking for a guy who doesn't cost you an international slot. You're looking for a guy who's 26 years old. The only thing that really sort of worries me, Kevin, whenever I look at this is that he has not played any games. If you look at just some of the last sort of years, 2018, 2019, 14 games, look at one of his biggest years, 2019, 2020, 21 games, then 4 games, then 14 games, then 12 games so far this year. He's not putting up the numbers that you would sort of expect from a guy who's going to come and suddenly be a 34-game starter for you. Either he's underutilized, which it feels like he is, or something else is going on there. And I think you have to be a little bit concerned with, just his ruggedness in an MLS season. That makes me a little worried about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to gamble and how much money you're going to have to pay him. You and I were talking about Lletget's salary around 900, just under $1 million. Let's just call it that. It would probably be a similar salary and, maybe in the 7s or 800s for Tyler Boyd, or you're going to have to put some of that money towards a transfer fee in order to get him loose. It's a little bit of a gamble for the LA Galaxy, but if you have to move Sebastian Lletget and you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff for that within the league, then perhaps that offsets any of the risks that you're going to take with Tyler Boyd if you were looking to bring him out of Turkey.
Well, and it does a number of other things, too. It tells me that if they bring in a winger, it tells me that, once again, they're saying Efrain Alvarez is not ready to play every day, that he's a bench player, which I'm sure is not going to set well with Efrain. But that would be correct in my mind, that he hasn't proven that he can do that. It also it would have an interesting effect, I think, on Kevin Cabral, in saying that, look, you're a DP. We brought you in here. You're highly touted. We paid a lot of money for you. You got a pedigree. Now we're going to put you at a second position, and it's up to you to prove yourself. Or, you're not long for here. I do think that one of the things about Greg Vanney is he believes strongly in competition, the idea of challenging players to say, this is your position, but not forever if you don't produce. And if that scenario that you just talked about, and I do think Chicharito plays much better in a 2-forward situation, or even a 4-3-3. He needs help. He's a poacher. He needs help. He's really good on the rebounds and other things like that. He needs other people putting the ball on goal. So in a lot of ways, I can see that working. Having a partner up top with Chicharito would help him. Challenging Kevin Cabral to finally start to deliver on the promise that he brought when he came from France, that would also help.
Yeah, let's be very honest that whenever I try to do this, Kevin, it really is sort of shoehorning somebody in and trying to make that work. But maybe that's what Greg Vanney is thinking. And if you can make an argument that Vanney is thinking that he wants 2 forwards and therefore he needs an additional winger, and maybe Tyler Boyd makes sense for that if it's not going to be Sebastian Lletget, which means you're going to have to move Lletget and then you go after Tyler Boyd. All reasonable things to sort of say that they could happen and it could come down. So just keep an eye on that one. I think it's an interesting one. He's averaging, by the way, in his 12 Super League appearances that he's playing right now in Turkey, he's averaging a little over 62 minutes per game. So again, not a ton of minutes for a 26-year-old who supposedly, 26 to 28, 29 is your peak. You're getting a guy who should be in his peak, but he's not playing a lot of minutes. There's a little bit of worrying in terms of if that's the right move for the LA Galaxy. But I certainly think it would signal what Greg Vanney's trying to do. If for some reason the Galaxy do pick up Tyler Boyd, you're like, okay, we know he wants 2 forwards up top, and Cabral and Joveljic are going to be battling out for those particular positions, to help Chicharito there. Or you're going to see, Chicharito get injured again, which is a very big possibility, knowing his history of injuries with the LA Galaxy. He gets injured again, you have Joveljic and Cabral as your starting forwards. There's also a chance I think the LA Galaxy could target somebody in a target striker sort of role as well, bringing in. I think there's going to be 8 or 9 additions to this roster. I think that's sort of where we sit, and that kind of makes sense when you look at the roster and how many open spots there are. There's going to be 1 designated player. I would imagine we see that this winter, because I don't think Greg Vanney wants to try to fill that in the summertime, but maybe summer's right before World Cup too. It's just, this is a weird year. I don't know how you fill that vacancy with 100% certainty.
The whole World Cup is interesting too, because the European leagues are going to pause around the World Cup, which means they're going to be 10 games in. A lot of guys probably are not going to be 100% game fit going into the World Cup, as they normally are, because the World Cup comes after the European season. MLS, conversely, if you're a guy trying to get on your national team, trying to win a spot on your national team, this might be the World Cup year that you come to MLS, because you're going to play 34 games and perhaps a playoff, and you're going to be game fit going to the World Cup. You could be more valuable to your team. So it is interesting. Chris Klein did say that they definitely have that DP spot they want to fill, and he said one or maybe two other positions. He said he thought that the team was pretty well set. He liked the fact that the team now is a team where remember it was being put together as the season moved on. Now all these guys know each other. They played with each other a little bit. He thinks that they're going to be on the same sort of footing when they get into next season. But when you're talking about Tyler Boyd again, and you're talking about looking at the acquisitions and what it does for the formation, if they bring in a winger, I think that's a message to Efrain Alvarez, who you were going to suggest may not be here much longer anyways.
Yeah, so that is my interesting, and I was trying to think of this all led to my thinking. So it was stream of consciousness.
Wasn't that a great segue? I teed that puppy up for you.
Professional is what it was. That's what it was.
That's right.
So yeah, I was thinking about this. So if you get Tyler Boyd and you're starting to think about that, you're like, oh, okay, well then you're sort of mixing things around. Well, then there would be a combination of Boyd and Araujo on the right hand side. Araujo plays advanced. Boyd and Araujo would be a partnership on the right hand side that perhaps could see a lot of movement. But everybody's asking, of course, about Julian Araujo and what his future is with the LA Galaxy. And anybody who's been listening to the show for any period of time knows that I've been expecting Julian Araujo to leave for like the last 365 days. Basically, when's he going? He's gone. He's not going to stay. Here is the one thing, though, I started to think about today, started to go over, which is Julian Araujo has made himself irreplaceable to the LA Galaxy, right? They can't go out and get a 22-year-old. They can't go out and get a 22-year-old right back who's going to put in the production that he had. By the way, somebody did a based on metrics in MLS, like starting 11 or the best 11 based on metrics, and Julian Araujo was tied sort of in that right wing, right back section. He wasn't the top person, but he was tied for one of the best in the league.
And why do you say 22 anyways? He's 19.
Is he still 19? Oh,
yes.
Right.
Still a teenager.
Sorry, I think he's older than he is. Sorry. You're not going to be able to go out and get this guy. You could not go and buy a 19-year-old Julian Araujo and put him in Major League Soccer if he was outside of the league. And so his replacement is going to be very difficult. So you're going to get worse if you're the LA Galaxy if you let Julian Araujo go. And he played so well that his price has gone up, in my opinion, right? And it's sort of skyrocketed and it's sort of in there, which would argue then you would say, well, then sell high. But the thing is, now I think his price has sort of gone to an area where it's not going to be the teams getting ready to take a chance on a development player now. Now you're talking about teams who need a right back, a starting right back, and they want a 19-year-old Julian Araujo to come in and play that as a starting position. So there's a lot more money sort of on the line now. This is my argument. This is how I talk myself into this. So just hang in there with me a little bit. So now, if you're looking at Efrain Alvarez and Julian Araujo, Kevin, it's easier to sell somebody like Efrain Alvarez because the expectations aren't as high, and somebody in Liga MX certainly would be willing to take a flyer that he's going to be really good, and it won't cost him that much money. Julian Araujo now costs so much money, you have to know that you have a spot for him to play, and that you're going to make that sort of that definition. So I think that Julian Araujo played so well last year that he may have earned himself more years in MLS. Now, I don't know if that's what he wanted. I imagine eventually he wants to go off to Europe. But you're talking about a guy who simply cannot be replaced inside of Major League Soccer. And because of that, his price is so much. He's worth so much more to the LA Galaxy now that somebody might not even want to pay that amount on the outside of the league.
I kind of reached the same conclusion, but I didn't go through all that convoluted, weird thinking that you did. I just looked at the fact that the Galaxy let Fisher, Hämäläinen, and Danielo Acosta go, and they have no coverage at outside back. That told me that they had no plans on entertaining any offers for Julian Araujo. And you're right about Efrain Alvarez. Again, if they bring in a right back or a winger, if they bring in a winger on either side, or they're even thinking about bringing in a winger on either side, once again, there's no room for Efrain Alvarez. And again, going back to World Cup year, Liga MX has basically the same calendar as MLS in that they play a full season that ends right before the World Cup. If Efrain Alvarez wants to break into that Mexican team, move to I think for him right now, move to Liga MX now that he's with the Mexican national team is better for him than a move to Europe. And that's a tough sell. I understand there's a lot of reasons why people might argue that, but I do think if he's trying to break in with the Mexican national team, being in Mexico is where he wants to be. That would be I see that move happening if Dennis is still here and his connections with Mexico. I think that would be an easy move for him to pull off if that's what they wanted to do. Might be a little more difficult. But that would be the best move for Efrain, especially if they sign a winger. He doesn't want to sit on the bench in a World Cup year.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm seeing now for Efrain Alvarez is that there is potential, and the Galaxy may want to trade on that potential, right? It's like, hey, I can cash in on this potential. He might not reach that potential. And we've seen starts and stutters. Certainly he had a lot better effect sort of in the second half of the year, which is good. He grew into it, but is he going to take another step forward? We've been waiting for him to sort of break out and do those things. So if you're the Galaxy, are you confident? If you're Greg Vanney, are you confident that Efrain Alvarez is going to take another step forward, that he has what it takes to really be a force in Major League Soccer, a starter, or do you take the money now and you sort of cash out and say, I'm not so sure about him, and because I'm not so sure, now might be the time. There's enough, hype around him that we could probably get some good money. We could use that money for other things. Maybe now's the time for Efrain. Whereas in Julian Araujo, the potential is still there for him to get better, but the potential is also that there's no potential. He's shown what he can do on the field. And so to me, that's worth so much more to the LA Galaxy. We've talked about that, I think, to other players, which is a player who's worth more to the LA Galaxy than he is to any other team, right? Julian Araujo is worth more to the LA Galaxy right now than almost any other team, unless somebody wants to come in and offer them like $20-25 million or something like that, and that's probably way too high. But maybe it's 12 or 15.
Well, and speaking of that, people in around Liga MX tell me one place to go with a player like Efrain Alvarez, who was born in the U.S. but is Mexican, is eligible for a Mexican passport. Going to Chivas of Guadalajara, they overpay for Mexicans because they still operate under that rule where you have to qualify for Mexican citizenship, Mexican passport to play for Chivas. The rest of the Mexican league is now looking outside Mexico's borders. Chivas is not. Chivas will overpay for a player who has, Mexican citizenship capabilities, can get a Mexican passport. Efrain Alvarez has that. That might be a place where the Galaxy might want to move him.
All right, let's shut down a little bit of the rumor talk and let's go to a little bit to MLS Next Pro. And if you're confused, one by the font or two by the name, by the way, everybody should go look at this font.
That logo is wow. The logo is pretty bad.
I have to ask this question though, just sort of watching from the outside and not really caring all that much. Is there any logo that doesn't get absolutely panned whenever it gets put on like a social media or anything?
No, I read a thing a while ago and I forget exactly what the context was, but it was talking about changing a brand. And they said when you do that, this marketing expert said, when you do that, you have to be totally committed to listening to crap about your new brand for 6 months. If you can get past 6 months and you're still in business, you're doing good.
You're good.
But it's the first 6 months, nobody likes it. And we just saw that the Mexican national team just changed their logo for the first time in decades. Widely panned, but they spent 2 years designing this thing. They're going to hang in there at least for 6 months.
Chicago Fire would like to have a word about, changing logos and doing all sorts of stuff with that. So, MLS Next Pro. Now, if you've been living under a rock and you haven't been paying attention to the academy system that was in the U.S. and how U.S. Soccer had the U.S. Developmental League, or I forget exactly what they called it, that went away. And when that went away, there was this huge void to sort of try to fill, and MLS wanted to try to fill that void and do some different things. And so they created MLS Next, which is going to be this academy system. So this academy with outside teams comes in, and it's for developmental kids, U7s, probably all the way up to, U18s, and that's sort of that MLS, U16s, that's that MLS, sort of niche that they're trying to fill with these academy positions. Well, now comes the next step of that. Everybody's aware the LA Galaxy 2 play in USL Championship.
Second tier league.
So that's the second division of soccer in the United States. LA Galaxy 2 started that team in 2014. It was the first MLS team to have a USL team. And as the LA Galaxy 2 sort of, come in and play these games. Now, for fits and starts that's been really good for the LA Galaxy. And if you listen to any of our talks with Dennis DeCloso, either at our live show or certainly during that development show that he and I had to talk about, there were questions about this next phase where MLS was going away from USL. And I think there's reasons why MLS was going away from USL. Certainly people have said that MLS wants to take over all levels of the pyramid for, soccer and development and all those things. And MLS Next Pro is this level. Now it's a third division, so not second division, third division league. MLS
so we'll
Next
compete
Pro.
with USL Pro under USL Championship. By the way, the best team in USL Championship right here, Southern California.
Something with Orange County. That's right.
Orange County Soccer Club.
Yeah, that was actually a fun final to watch as well. And what a fun run for them. Is just a team that doesn't score very many goals goes into the final and scores. I think it was 4-1 was the final. It was
3-1.
3-1.
They had an Haitian International score two of their goals. By the way, the only professional sports team in Southern California that will win a championship this year, because the Rams or Chargers win the Super Bowl. That's next year. I don't care if it's this season.
Gotcha.
This calendar year,
yes.
Orange County Soccer Club. That's it.
There you go. So, but anyway, so you have the USL, and the USL and MLS have been married for a while, right? They've been promoting each other, and you've seen massive growth in USL, the championship levels, the pro levels, their League One and League Two as well. So there's 4 divisions of soccer basically that fit under USL, second through fifth. Whenever you look at all the different teams that are sort of sitting there, so. Here's the problem with USL, and the Galaxy run into this sometimes, but the Galaxy enjoy this part of it is. I just don't know if USL enjoys the part. The problem is the LA Galaxy are out there trying to develop players for the senior team. The results for their USL team, while important, are not the main goal, right? They're not out there to try to win a USL championship. If it happens, that's great. The Galaxy almost did that in that 2014, 2016 era, somewhere in there.
Kurt Araujo was the coach then.
Kurt Araujo was the coach. Pete Vianis sent the leading scorer for the whole entire league of USL, which was Jack McBean on loan, where he didn't play under a coach who then got fired. By the way, Jack McBean ended up finishing second or third in the Golden Boot for that and didn't play the last 8 or 12 weeks of the season. So just to understand how far ahead he was whenever he got sent out, did all those things. So the LA Galaxy too have flirted with that in sort of being good, but at the same time, their ultimate goal is the development, Kevin. And that's the goal for most of these teams that were playing either in USL Championship or USL Pro for in Major League Soccer. These secondary teams were, winning's cool, but we really need to develop guys for our senior team, and that's more important. Well, that sort of clashes with most of the other teams in USL, which is, Orange County, the Renos, or, some of the other non-affiliated teams were out there trying to win championships, and you had teams where the LA Galaxy too had 22-year-old, an average starting age of 22 years old, playing against an average starting team of 30 years old.
But there was a benefit in that, because when you're talking about this MLS Next, which is a third division team, is going to be a developmental team, even though it's going to play in an organized league. It's a developmental team. The thing with the USL Championship is, remember when Robbie Rogers was trying to move from midfield to outside back, Bruce Arena sent him down to play there. Why? Because in USL Championship, you're playing against professionals, you're playing against men. It's not boys. It's not a developmental league. It's not kids learning the game. It's a serious league. With serious players trying to win championships. That's what you want when you want Robbie Rogers to learn to play outside back. You want him playing against men who are trying to win a championship. So It served its purpose. It serves its purpose still.
It serves their purpose, certainly, for the LA Galaxy. Now, here's the thing is, this league, this MLS Next Pro, is going to be a third division of U.S. soccer, all 21 initial teams, including a couple outside teams outside the league.
Rochester, owned by Jamie Vardy.
Right. Go ahead.
Leicester, right?
Leicester. But you have them, the Rochester Rhinos, which aren't the Rochester Rhinos anymore. They changed their name in order to go into this. They're into MLS Next. They're going to be part of this. So you have 21 teams. The LA Galaxy are not one of them.
Nor is LAFC. No teams in Southern California.
And the reason that they're not going to be part of this is that, well, certainly Dennis was very clear on our show multiple times. I want to wait and see how this pans out because I don't want to go to a league that is of lesser competition than what we already have in USL Championship, right? Because, again, the LA Galaxy are striving for that. They like that level of competition. They like pressing these young kids to play against these men. That's where it's an advantage. And if you have a group and an academy and, a second division team that understands that that's what you're trying to do, super huge benefit for that.
And they play in real stadiums for the most part. They play in real stadiums, and not the size of Dignity Health Sports Park, not all of them, but they play in real stadiums with real fans, with an atmosphere. This MLS Next is not going to have any of that. And so you're going to take somebody from, are you really going to try to take someone from MLS Next and then take them up and say, hey, you're going to make your Galaxy debut in Atlanta in front of 75,000 fans at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and you're playing in MLS right now? No, that's just not going to happen.
So as it stands right now, LA Galaxy will play in the USL Championship in 2022. That was confirmed today. Press releases confirmed it, but I also double-checked just to make sure. And Dennis had told us that before he left as well, that the LA Galaxy would not be joining this next league until 2023. So that's what the LA Galaxy now have to look forward to. But, this feels like a step backwards in terms of what the LA Galaxy are trying to do. And we've talked about the Reserve League on here before, and their MLS had a Reserve League. I actually had been to some Reserve League games because they used to happen on, the weekends. Like if there was a game on Saturday night, the Reserve League would be played on Sunday morning on the, one of the outside fields, and they'd have referees, and it would be like the subs who didn't play. I remember Mike McGee playing in a Reserve League game, just cussing out everybody the whole entire time because he needed to get some minutes, and he was out there, so he was like in charge of everything. And just the man has a very dirty mouth. I don't know if everybody knows that about Mike. Great guy, but he has all this stuff. But that was the Reserve League. The Reserve League never amounted to anything because playing your bench players does not a development league make. And does not really, yes, you get some minutes. Yes, you get some running around. Yes, some things happen. But that's not a full-fledged league like USL is and sort of how it is. So what you're going to get is it feels like is this sort of reserve league that you're going to have academy players play on it as well. And they're going to try to mirror something similar to what USL is doing. I see this as a colossal waste of money. But with USL talking about promotion and relegation, Kevin, and trying to basically separate themselves a little bit from what Major League Soccer is doing, MLS isn't going to sit there and just keep supporting that league if they're going to diverge from what MLS wants to do. And I think in some ways MLS thinks that they created USL or they helped sustain USL and bring it forward. Remember with the NASL and different things that have sort of happened over the last 8 years, really, USL has grown in leaps and bounds, and MLS and its support with all those teams is one of the reasons for that. Now, can USL survive that with bunches of things that are happening with USL Pro, the third division, League One, and just the different union contracts and a whole bunch of other things. So there is now this pathway, at least within MLS, and in a fishbowl, they have a pathway, Kevin. They have MLS Next, which is the academy system that sort of is the academy system competition. And then you're going to have MLS Next Pro, which is this professional third division soccer league that they're going to try to go out and do this. And then you eventually have, MLS and that thing. This feels like it is an overreach by Major League Soccer. I wouldn't be surprised if we watch it for like 4 or 5 years and then it collapses again. Because
and the other thing is with the Galaxy, they have a year now. They're on notice. They're going to be in this league. Their academy, my understanding is, more about this than I do, which is not surprising. But the academy a little bit in disarray. The academy system. It was.
I would say it's less of a little bit now, and things are starting to stabilize. And I thought it was great that MLS was sort of going to pick up this academy side of things because there needed to be some umbrella that captures this and tries to do this. I don't like the fishbowl that it's creating. And we talked so much, Kevin, about talent and the talent dilution that is going on all over. Well, now you just create another league. And you create another league at an area where, yes, I think you can develop more talent, and I think you can do things, and you can spread things around between USL and this. But what are you going to do to guys who are playing in the academy, and then all of a sudden you bring them up into this, MLS Next Pro, this third division of soccer, and then there seems to be this giant gap now. And are you going to loan people out to USL clubs? Can the Galaxy still have a USL club and play an MLS Next Pro club? That's the next thing I'm waiting for, an LA Galaxy 3 to be inserted into MLS Next Pro.
Well, yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, the jump between MLS Next Pro and MLS would be huge, and I think it'd be a difficult one. That the USL Championship step is interesting, but you mentioned promotion and relegation. You let the cat out of the bag. That's a discussion I really don't want to have, because I don't think MLS is anywhere, for a number of monetary reasons, financial reasons. I don't think they're close to promotion and relegation. But if MLS gets out of the USL Championship business, it does open that possibility. Why? Because when MLS has teams in USL Championship, the conflict of interest is too great. If you have a team that is about to get promoted and your MLS team is about to get demoted, there's a conflict of interest there. You control both teams. So that is something that MLS had to get rid of. If there's ever going to be a chance at promotion relegation, they can't have teams in both leagues.
Well, and I think more USL wants to do it within their pyramid, right? So maybe it doesn't even jump up to MLS, which is a closed league, right? This is just the pyramid down there, and they want to do up and down. And for MLS, I don't know that they want to put that up. Oh, the goals for MLS 2 teams were completely different than the people who were in these USL Championship and Pro teams, right? And yes, that's good for development for the LA Galaxy or for the teams that have that second division, but it's bad for USL, right? You don't want teams that are just going to get run over because they're playing, it's all 17-year-olds today, because, the academy system, they want to test some guys out and sort of see how it goes, and they don't care whether or not they win the game or lose the game. That hurts the competition overall in the league. And so between those conflicting things, the USL Pro stuff, the USL Championship, the different union contracts now, and then everything else that's sort of going with MLS and how they've got the fish bubble, this is going to be one of those things that's developing. Now, for the most part, LA Galaxy fans, you don't have to worry about it this year, and I'm sorry that we just spent, however long we spent talking about it in order to say that, but at the same time, this is coming in 2023, and I imagine the league is forcing the Galaxy into this.
And there are other reasons to do this. Remember, now that the MLS teams get the finder's fee if the player goes to Europe. If he would jump from MLS Next Pro to Europe,
so true. The control is such an important part of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll get some money, and we've seen that. You look at the FC Dallas Academy system. All the guys they've sent, Weston McKennie and Chris Richards, all these guys that have gone to Europe. There's money to be made there, and. This is just maybe this is just another way to corral a bunch of kids. And if 1 out of every 50 makes a move to Europe and they get a little bit of a little bit of money out of it, that supports the system.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. All right, we'll see how that goes. By the way, Josh,
one last thing to put in on that is we have seen a lot of European teams, Roma, Barcelona, PSG, all coming over here, starting academies at that same age group that USL Pro Next is looking at. This could be an answer to that. Why let Roma grab the best kids in the San Fernando Valley? Why not just corral them and bring them into LA Galaxy Academy? And maybe, again, nothing happens, but why let Roma scout these kids and sign these kids and get the money for these kids? We can do that.
Yeah, Josh in the chat room was saying, our last player from the academy was, and Cameron already got it before me, but Araujo, Saldana, Efrain Alvarez, Jalen Neal, Marcus Vercranis, Jonathan Perez, excuse me. There's been a lot of Galaxy Academy players, and that even goes all the way back into, I think, some of Dan Steres, whenever you talk about Dan Steres and Dave Romney. Giassi, that one, I know everybody wants to use that one as the one, and just so you know, the LA Galaxy kept him in the academy the exact number of days long enough in order to make him a homegrown player. So he was developed somewhere else, and they used that to their advantage, which is fine. I have no problems with that. But yeah, Giassi's artist isn't always the best one. If you want to make that argument for people who don't know what happened, that's fine.
Didn't David Beckham come to the academy?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he walked right through it on his way into the office sometimes. Yeah. So I'm sure he went to when it always goes to the things. So anyway, that's what we got. I'm trying to think, is there anything else you want to talk about, or we're good?
I had nothing to talk about when I started this thing, so I made it an hour. I can't believe it.
I'm glad. MLS Next is going to be an interesting MLS Next Pro and sort of how that develops. And I think it's good that the Galaxy sort of get to sit on the sidelines and watch it be a calamity for a little while. And whenever it's calamity and whenever it's all maybe settled down in a year, hopefully, maybe there's a good idea of what that competition looks like and how it actually affects the LA Galaxy. I would be shocked, by the way, if the LA Galaxy can put up a big enough argument to tell Major League Soccer they don't want to join it. But I think that was the way that that certainly Dennis was leaning at some point. And he said, we'll have to wait and see. But I always heard wait and see sort of as, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do this. This doesn't sound like it's smart for us.
Who do you like in MLS Cup?
Portland.
Yeah, Steve Clark's only given up 2 goals in the playoffs. I think 2 goals in the last 5 games. And Portland's playing at home. It's going to be a wild, for the first time ever. They've been in MLS Cup a couple of times. First time they've ever hosted it. It's going to be a wild crowd on the turf.
Should be fun. I'm looking forward to at least watching it. I like watching from a neutral perspective and complaining about things. So I'm all about that. So
am I allowed to cheer for Portland since?
You're not allowed to cheer for anybody. You're
New York. That's right. Yeah, but New York City is owned by Manchester City. I have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, apparently you do. That is on more than one case. So that.
By the way, we're wearing the Leon jersey today because they made the Liga MX finals. They're going to play Atlas.
Yes, that's what I heard, and people in the chat room are already giving you crap for it, which is probably deserved. I want to just point out that Julian Araujo and Efrain Alvarez playing Wednesday, December 8th. It's Mexico versus Chile.
In Austin?
the Q2 Arena in Austin. So if you want to check that out, you certainly can. And then there's obviously the U.S. men's national team game is coming up at Dignity Health Sports Park, I think in January, right? So
in January. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah,
or December.
No, December 18th.
Yeah, it's December 18th. That's right.
It's against Bosnia and Herzegovina, both of those teams, so it's 2 against 1.
Yes.
If they win, Greg Berhalter will become the first coach in U.S. national team history to win 17 games in the same calendar year. He's already won 2 trophies this year, so it would be the best year in terms of victories and trophies in U.S. national team history, which is something. So that's what they're playing for. Also, Mexico going in this game in Chile, they lost a friendly before the last 2 World Cup qualifiers. Mexico has lost 3 games in a row. I can't remember the last time they lost 4 in a row. So there's a little bit on the line in this Chile game for Mexico.
Yep, December 18th again. December 18th, just a reminder there for that.
That's for the U.S. Yes.
Uh-huh. And then December 8th, which is on Wednesday, coming up for Mexico and Chile. So there you go. That's what we have. All right, we have another, yes? Anything else? Okay, good.
I'm just looking at the 8th is actually, okay. You got that right.
Yep. A show coming up on Thursday. I think the Hammer is in town, so I think it'll be Hammer and I on Thursday. Who knows what we'll talk about. Hopefully
Hammer
something
time.
will happen. Yeah, we'll see. See if we can actually talk about something and get that going. So that's what we got. I think if you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at KBaxter11, and head on over to LATimes.com for all of his writing. I'm sure he will surprise us with a article that's never been written before coming up very soon. That's what I'm guessing. We'll see if that happens. LATimes.com for Mr. Kevin Baxter. That's where you can find him. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. That's where you can find our podcast. Go to YouTube, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff as well. So please go subscribe, rate, all those fun things. Tell your friends about us, and hopefully we'll have some more news for you on Thursday. All right, that does it for me. That does it for the Panda as well. I'm Josh Pato Guesman. He's Kevin, the Panda Baxter. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.